It surprises me every morning how much there is to remember. The fuss we must wade through before life becomes life. The eating and the drinking and the cleansing especially. Every day I question whether such cleansing has a purpose, for a hermit especially. But I have learned to trust my routines. When I lose trust in routines, bad things can happen. I pick up a water glass and routine saves me again, saves me from languishing in thoughts of the game, nudges me back to the present. 2-1. It had taken an act of immense bravery for Chad to befriend Jolyon. Chad and the other Americans in the year-long program had arrived in England a week before the British freshmen. At Pitt, they called them freshers, but at least the words were similar. Chad would have drilled into him far greater lexical oddities than this while studying at Oxford. The cleaners they called scouts, the bills they called battles, the tests called collections. And during that first lonely week, as was his habit, Chad failed to make friends with his countrymen, a habit that made him feel awkward and defective. There were 6 of them, and they had been garrisoned together in a narrow terrace house a few streets below the river, a 15-minute walk from Pitt College. Coming to Oxford was the numero uno bravest thing Chad had ever done. And he had come for adventure, so he didn't see how spending time with his fellow Americans would benefit him. Because adventure wasn't a vain search for some decent frickin' food in the city. Adventure wasn't a sweatshirt with your university name emblazoned proud and blue across the chest. And the truly adventurous surely had access to more than 3 adjectives when describing the architectural splendor that surrounded them. Cute, cool, awesome. Around these Americans, Chad knew he would never escape that part of himself from which he longed to break free. The shyness, the gulping and blushing, and smiling at people when the more honest reply would be bullshit. Although sometimes Chad wondered if his shyness was actually a secret defense mechanism, an evolved shield. Perhaps biting your tongue was the only thing that kept the worst parts of you hidden from the world. But what if shyness was simply a curse, and in the world beyond his sealed lips, a whole better life awaited him, the real Chad? And so he resolved to act, to do something entirely un-Chad-like. He had pushed himself into adventure, and now he needed to push himself just one more time. He would force himself to make friends with one British student at Pitt. Because any friendship was a path, and paths always led elsewhere. To more paths and new places. Maybe even a better kind of life. And then, if he could only find a new world, Chad would skip down its lanes, wherever they took him. 2-2. Chad reasoned that freshmen would be the most open to new friendships. He should strike early on in the game before impenetrable circles and cabals began to form. This was a lesson learned from the errors Chad had made in his first year at Susan Leonard. A semi-lonely freshman, a barely social sophomore. He had hand-delivered the application to spend his junior year abroad on the day they began accepting submissions. And so, at the end of that first week in England, Chad spent 2 hours standing in the front quad of Pitt College. 2 hours, and every minute becoming more forlorn, his temporary resolve dwindling by the second. Yes, throughout those 2 hours a steady trail of freshmen did indeed appear. But they arrived not alone, not companionless as they had been imagined. Instead, they came accompanied by coteries of parents, proud, harboring parents, besuited parents, parents swarming their beloved children and buzzing with manifest pride. Over and over Chad watched the same routine unfolding. The freshman's first entrance through Pitt's front gate in the painfully assembled clothing that best summated his or her desired image.